I came home from the lawyer's office, thrilled to share the news. My uncle left me 4 apartments and a beach house. My hand froze on the doorknob when I heard Frank say, "Once she signs the power of attorney, we transfer everything to Stephen's name and get her committed." Vanessa's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "The nursing home already has a room waiting." I stood there, shopping bags cutting into my palms, as my 42-year marriage shattered into 1,000 pieces. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I need to back up and tell you how I got here. Standing outside my own front door, eavesdropping on my husband and daughter-in-law, plotting to steal my inheritance and lock me away like yesterday's trash. That morning, I'd been at Mitchell & Associates, my Uncle Gerald's law firm. "Mrs. Whitman," Daniel Mitchell had said, sliding documents across his mahogany desk, "your uncle was very specific about his wishes. 4 apartment buildings in downtown Portland, and the beach house in Cannon Beach go directly to you. No joint ownership, no probate, just you." I'd stared at the papers, my hands trembling. Uncle Gerald had always been my favorite, the only one who'd listened when I talked about wanting to study architecture instead of getting married at 23. "The total value?" I'd whispered. "Conservatively, $8.2 million. I'd driven home in a daze, stopping at the grocery store out of habit. Frank loved his Tuesday pot roast. After 42 years of marriage, some routines ran deeper than thought. I'd even picked up those expensive imported beers he liked, the ones we usually couldn't afford. Now I stood frozen in my own doorway, listening to my husband conspire with our daughter-in-law to rob me. "What about Stephen?" Frank's voice carried through the door. "He doesn't need to know the details yet. Once Dorothy's safely in Riverside Manor, we'll explain how her mental decline made it necessary." "She seemed fine this morning," Vanessa said, and I could picture her examining her manicured nails. "You'll need to sell the confusion angle better. I've been laying groundwork for months, mentioning how she forgets things, gets dates mixed up. Dr. Harrison will sign the evaluation forms. He owes me a favor." My throat closed. All those times Frank had corrected me in front of friends, insisting I'd gotten the day wrong or forgotten a conversation that never happened. I'd thought I was losing my mind. Turns out I was losing my freedom instead. "When do we make our move?" Vanessa asked. "This weekend. I'll tell her we need to update our estate planning now that Gerald's gone. Get her to sign documents while she's emotional and vulnerable. She won't even read them carefully. She trusts me." The grocery bag slipped from my numb fingers. A beer bottle shattered on the porch, and the voices inside went silent. "What was that?" Vanessa hissed. I forced my shaking hands to gather the bags, leaving the broken bottle. "Frank!" I called out, making my voice cheerful as I turned the knob. "I'm home. I dropped something on the porch. These bags are so heavy." I walked into my living room and found them sitting on opposite ends of my cream-colored sofa, Frank with his newspaper and Vanessa scrolling through her phone. Picture-perfect innocence. If I hadn't just heard them, I would have seen nothing wrong. "Hey, sweetheart." Frank folded his paper and smiled at me, the same smile that had won my heart 42 years ago. "How did it go at the lawyer's office?" I set the bags on the counter, my mind racing. I needed to think, to plan, to figure out how to protect myself. But first, I needed them to believe I suspected nothing. "Oh, lots of paperwork." I started unpacking groceries, my movements automatic. Uncle Gerald left me some properties. Nothing too exciting. "Properties?" Frank's voice sharpened with interest. "What kind of properties?" "Just some apartments downtown and the beach house." I haven't really looked at the details yet. I pulled out the pot roast, keeping my back to them. "I thought we could celebrate tonight. Your favorite dinner." In the mirror over the sink, I watched Vanessa and Frank exchange glances. She raised an eyebrow. He gave a subtle nod. "That's wonderful news." "Dot," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "We should definitely celebrate. Maybe this weekend we could all sit down and go through the paperwork together. Frank and I could help you understand everything." "That would be lovely." I smiled at her reflection, and something cold and hard settled in my chest. What would I do without family? What would I do, indeed? I spent Tuesday night lying next to Frank, listening to him snore, wondering how long he'd been planning this. 42 years of marriage, and I didn't know the man beside me at all. Wednesday morning, I made his coffee exactly the way he liked it. 2 sugars and a splash of cream. "Morning, sweetheart," he said, kissing my cheek like he had 1,000 mornings before. His betrayal tasted like ashes in my mouth, but I smiled. "Morning. I'm meeting Patty for lunch today." The lie came easily. I needed time to think, somewhere away from Frank's watchful eyes. "Sounds nice. Don't forget we have that appointment Saturday with the estate planner." My blood ran cold. "What appointment?" "I mentioned it last week, honey. Remember? Gerald's passing means we should update our own documents." His voice was patient, like he was talking to a confused child. "You said it was a good idea." Gaslighting me already. I wondered how many other conversations he'd invented, how many times he'd made me doubt my own memory. "Right. Of course. Saturday." After he left for his part-time consulting job, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and made a list. Not on paper where someone might find it. In my head, the way Uncle Gerald had taught me when I was 10 and we'd play detective games. 1. Find out exactly what Frank has access to. 2. Understand my legal rights. 3. Discover what else they've been hiding. 4. Protect myself without tipping them off. I started with our bedroom, feeling like a criminal in my own home. Frank's sock drawer yielded his passport, some cash, and a USB drive I'd never seen before. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop. Files filled the screen. Bank statements in Stephen's name showing transfers I never authorized. Property deeds with forged signatures. My signature, dozens of times, on documents I'd never seen. He'd been practicing, getting the loops and curves just right. The scope of his deception made me dizzy. This wasn't a spontaneous plan born from greed over Gerald's properties. This was years in the making. I photographed everything with my phone, uploaded it to a cloud account Frank didn't know existed, and put the drive back exactly where I'd found it. Next, I searched Vanessa's purse. She'd left it in the guest room yesterday, and women always kept their secrets in their purses. Credit card statements showed charges to online gambling sites. Thousands of dollars, and that was just last month. A business card for a loan shark with a New Jersey phone number was tucked in the side pocket. So Vanessa had debts, Frank had a forged document collection, and my inheritance had appeared like an answer to their prayers, a golden ticket they planned to steal. But did Stephen know? My son, my baby boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them sunshine flowers? I called him at work. "Hey, Mom." His voice was warm, genuine. "What's up? Just wanted to hear your voice. Are you and the kids free for lunch tomorrow? Just us? Your dad mentioned you've been working such long hours. Always time for you. Meet you at Angelo's at noon?" The relief that washed through me was physical. Stephen didn't know. Whatever poison Vanessa had been brewing, she'd kept it from my son. That afternoon, I drove to a different law office across town, one Frank wouldn't know about. The attorney, Linda Morrison, was around my age with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. "Tell me everything," she said. And I did. When I finished, Linda was quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Whitman, what your husband has done constitutes fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. You could have him arrested." "Not yet." I surprised myself with how steady my voice was. "I need to understand the full picture first. Can we protect my inheritance without alerting him?" Linda smiled. And it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who dealt with men like Frank before and enjoyed watching them fall. "Oh, we can do much better than that." Thursday lunch with Stephen confirmed what I'd hoped. He knew nothing about Vanessa's gambling or Frank's plans. "Mom, you seem different," he said, studying my face across the table. "Not bad different, just sharper somehow. Your Uncle Gerald's death has made me think about things, about what matters." I reached across and squeezed his hand. "Stephen, if someone you loved was in trouble, you'd tell me, right?" His brow furrowed. "Of course. Is something wrong?" "Not yet," I smiled. "But promise me something. If your father or Vanessa ask you to sign anything related to my inheritance, call me first. Don't sign anything without reading it carefully." "Mom, that's a weird thing to ask." "Promise me." He promised, confused but sincere. My boy, my good boy, who deserved better than the viper he'd married. Friday evening, Frank suggested we have dinner at Stephen and Vanessa's house. "Wouldn't it be nice for all of us to be together? Talk about the future?" "Wonderful idea," I said, my smile as fake as his concern. I'll bring dessert. In the mirror, I practiced looking confused, forgetful, vulnerable, the kind of woman who'd sign away her rights without question, the kind of woman Frank thought I was. But here's what Frank didn't know about me. Uncle Gerald hadn't just left me properties. He'd left me his lessons too. All those detective games, all those discussions about thinking 3 moves ahead. Frank thought he was playing chess. He thought I was a pawn. He was about to learn I'd been studying the board my whole life. Saturday morning, I woke up before dawn and lay there plotting. Frank snored beside me, peaceful as a baby, and I wondered what it said about a person that they could sleep so soundly while planning to destroy someone's life. The estate planning appointment was scheduled for 2 p.m. I had 6 hours. At 7, I slipped out of bed and drove to a copy shop 30 minutes away, where nobody knew me. I printed everything from my secret cloud account. The forged signatures, the bank transfers, Vanessa's gambling debts, all of it. 2 complete sets, one for Linda Morrison, one for me, hidden somewhere Frank would never think to look. Where does a 67-year-old woman hide evidence? In plain sight, that's where. I bought a binder and labeled it Recipes from Aunt Martha in my neatest handwriting. Frank hadn't cooked a meal in 40 years. He'd never open it. By 9 a.m., I was home making pancakes when Frank came downstairs. Morning, beautiful. Big day ahead. I'm looking forward to it. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Want to know something funny? I found some old photos yesterday while cleaning. Remember our honeymoon in Seattle? His face softened. The Space Needle. You were so scared going up in that elevator. You held my hand the whole time. I slid pancakes onto his plate. Where did that man go, Frank? For just a second, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt? Regret? Then it was gone, replaced by his comfortable mask. I'm right here. Dot, I've always been right here. I almost believed him. That's how good he was. At 2 p.m. we sat in Mark Henderson's office, an estate planning attorney Frank had chosen. Mark was young, ambitious, with a handshake that lasted 2 seconds too long. So wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Whitman. Frank's told me so much about you. He spread documents across his desk, like playing cards. We want to make sure everything's protected, especially now with your inheritance. What exactly are we signing? I asked, reaching for the papers. Frank's hand covered mine. Don't worry, sweetheart. Mark will explain everything. I'd like to read them myself. I kept my voice pleasant but firm. Uncle Gerald always said never sign something you haven't read 3 times. Mark and Frank exchanged glances. Of course, Mark said smoothly. Take all the time you need. These are fairly standard. Durable power of attorney, healthcare proxy, updated will. I read slowly, moving my finger under each word like my grandmother used to do. The documents looked legitimate at first glance, but Uncle Gerald had taught me to read the fine print, the clauses hidden in legal language. There, on page 4 of the power of attorney, immediate and irrevocable transfer of authority over all assets, property, and financial decisions. Not if I became incapacitated. Immediate, as in the second I signed. This seems very broad, I said carefully. What if I just wanted Frank to handle things if I got sick? This is the standard form, Mark assured me. But his smile had frozen, and I saw him glance at Frank again. Could you give us a moment? Frank asked Mark. Of course. Mark left his own office, which told me everything I needed to know about who was really in charge of this meeting. Frank took both my hands in his. Dot, sweetheart, I know this seems scary, but we've been married 42 years. Don't you trust me? The question hung in the air between us. Did I trust the man who'd forged my signature? Who'd planned to have me committed? Who was trying to trick me into signing away my independence? Of course I trust you, I said, and watched relief flood his face. But Uncle Gerald just died 2 months ago. I'm grieving. Maybe we should wait a few weeks. Frank's jaw tightened. The inheritance needs to be protected now. If something happened to you before we got this sorted, what's going to happen to me in the next few weeks? I laughed, making it sound confused and slightly hurt. Frank, I'm 67, not 97. Your uncle was 88 when he died. Unexpected things happen, Dot. Was that a threat? I looked at my husband and realized I didn't know anymore. The man I'd loved for 42 years was a stranger wearing a familiar face. I think I should talk to my own lawyer first, I said quietly. Frank's expression went cold. Your own lawyer? We've used Henderson and Associates for 20 years. For our wills, yes, but this is different. This is Uncle Gerald's gift to me. I stood up, gathering my purse. I'll call you next week, Mark. Thank you for your time. I walked out of that office with Frank calling after me, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. In the parking lot, he caught up with me. What the hell was that about? What was what about? I unlocked my car, embarrassing me in front of Henderson, questioning everything. You've never acted like this before. I've never inherited $8 million before. I met his eyes. Frank, why are you so desperate for me to sign today? What's the rush? He stepped back like I'd slapped him. I'm trying to protect you, to protect us. But if you don't trust me anymore, I didn't say that. You implied it. He shook his head. You know what? Fine. Take your time. Talk to another lawyer. But Dot? His voice dropped low. Money changes people. I hope it doesn't change you. I drove away with my hands shaking so hard I had to pull over after 2 blocks. Money changes people. Like it had changed him? Like it had turned my husband into someone willing to forge documents and plot my imprisonment? My phone buzzed. Linda Morrison. Call me as soon as you can. I called from the parking lot of a grocery store. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect. I filed your paperwork this morning. Your inheritance is now in an irrevocable trust with you as the sole beneficiary and trustee. Frank can't touch it. Nobody can touch it. Not unless you choose to give them access. The relief was so intense I had to rest my forehead against the steering wheel. Thank you. There's more. I did some checking on your husband. Dorothy, he's been planning this for a while. Want to know how I know? Tell me. He applied for your commitment to Riverside Manor 6 weeks ago, before your uncle even died. The parking lot spun around me. What? The facility confirmed it. He told them you'd had several episodes of confusion and aggression, that you'd become a danger to yourself. He filled out all the preliminary paperwork. Frank had been planning to lock me away before there was even money to steal, just to get rid of me, to be free. Why? The word came out broken, out. Linda was quiet for a moment. I think you should have someone look into your husband's activities, Dorothy. Private investigator, someone discreet. Because men who plan this carefully usually have a reason. After hanging up, I sat in my car and watched ordinary people do their ordinary shopping. A young mother with 2 kids. An elderly couple walking hand in hand. People whose spouses weren't trying to erase them from existence. My phone rang. Vanessa. Dorothy. Her voice was honey and poison. Frank told me about the meeting. He's so upset. I think you hurt his feelings. I didn't mean to. Of course you didn't. You're just overwhelmed. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? Just family. We can all talk this through together. Together. Meaning Frank, Vanessa, and Stephen. 3 against 1. Perfect conditions for them to convince me I was being paranoid, difficult, ungrateful. That sounds lovely, I said. What time? Because I had my own plans for this dinner, and they were about to learn that underestimating a woman was the biggest mistake they could make. I stopped at an electronics store on the way home and bought something I'd never owned before. A small recording device disguised as a pen. The clerk, a teenager with purple hair, showed me how it worked. My mom uses one like this for her lectures, she said cheerfully. Super easy. Just click the top. Perfect. I added a second one, just in case. At home, Frank was in his office, door closed. I could hear him on the phone, voice low and intense. I pressed my ear against the door. Needs to sign by Monday. Henderson says we can't wait any longer. Once she starts talking to other lawyers, we're screwed. No, Stephen doesn't suspect anything. Look, if she won't cooperate, we'll have to accelerate the commitment timeline. I pulled away, bile rising in my throat. Monday. I had 3 days. I spent the afternoon in my sewing room, the one place Frank never entered, planning my next moves like Uncle Gerald had taught me. Think 3 steps ahead. Anticipate your opponent's moves. Never show your hand until you're ready to play. Step 1. Document everything at tonight's dinner. Step 2. Find out what Frank's hiding. Linda was right. There was more to this story. Step 3. Protect Stephen and the grandkids. Whatever explosion was coming, they shouldn't be caught in the fallout. At 5:30, I dressed carefully for dinner. Not too nice. Not too casual. The same blue cardigan Stephen had given me for Christmas. The pearl earrings Frank bought me for our 30th anniversary. I looked exactly like what I was supposed to be, a trusting wife and mother. The recording pen went in my purse. Frank drove us to Stephen and Vanessa's house, his jaw tight with tension. Just be reasonable tonight, Dot. That's all I ask. I'm always reasonable. I patted his hand, and he flinched slightly. Good. Let him wonder what I was thinking. Stephen opened the door, my grandchildren Kaylee and Brandon bouncing around his legs. Grandma! Brandon launched himself at me, and I caught him, breathing in his little boy smell of grass and sunshine. Hey, sweet boy, where's your sister? Kaylee, Grandma's here, he yelled toward the stairs. My 12-year-old granddaughter appeared, all long legs and self-consciousness, trying to act too cool for hugs but failing. I held her tight, memorizing this moment. Whatever happened, I'd make sure these kids were protected. Kids, go wash up for dinner, Vanessa called from the kitchen. She emerged wearing an apron, playing the perfect hostess. Dorothy, you look lovely. Come help me with the salad. In the kitchen, I activated the recording pen as Vanessa handed me a knife and cutting board. I want to apologize for any tension, I said carefully. Frank thinks I don't trust him. Do you? Vanessa's question was sharp, direct. I don't know anymore. The truth surprised me as much as it did her. Everything feels different since Uncle Gerald died. Money does that. She was chopping cucumbers with aggressive precision. Changes all the relationships, makes people suspicious. Is that what you think I'm being? Suspicious. She set down the knife and turned to face me. I think you've been handed an incredible opportunity, and you're too afraid to do anything with it. Those properties, Dorothy, do you know what they're worth? Do you understand what you could build? I'm 67 years old. What am I going to build? A legacy, security for your grandchildren, a future that doesn't depend on Social Security and Frank's pension. Her eyes gleamed with something hungry. But you need help. You need someone who understands investments, property management, financial planning. Someone like you? Someone like family. She smiled. Frank told me you're worried about the power of attorney. I get it. It seems scary. But think about it this way. If something happened to you tomorrow, who would protect your interests? Who would make sure those properties didn't get absorbed by the state or tied up in probate for years? Why would something happen to me tomorrow? Accidents happen. Dorothy, look at your uncle, 88 years old, healthy as a horse, then one day he just doesn't wake up. That could be any of us. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. I kept chopping tomatoes, my heart pounding. You're right. I should be more prepared. Exactly. Vanessa squeezed my shoulder, her grip just a little too tight. Family takes care of family. That's what Frank's been trying to tell you. At dinner, Frank made a toast. To family. To Dorothy's incredible inheritance. And to making sure we're all protected and prepared for the future. Here, here. Vanessa raised her glass. Stephen looked uncomfortable. Dad, maybe we shouldn't pressure Mom right now. Uncle Gerald just died. She's grieving. I'm not pressuring her. Frank's smile was tight. I'm being practical. Right, Dot? Right. I sipped my wine, watching them all watch me. Kaylee and Brandon were arguing about soccer practice, oblivious to the adult undercurrents. Stephen kept glancing between his wife and his father, sensing something wrong but unable to name it. After dessert, Vanessa suggested the kids go upstairs to do homework. Once they were gone, Frank pulled out papers from his briefcase. I took the liberty of having Henderson draft simpler documents. Nothing scary, just basics. Dad, Stephen started. Stephen, this is between your mother and me. Frank's voice had steel in it. Actually, I said quietly, it involves all of us. These properties will eventually be Stephen's inheritance. Shouldn't he be part of this conversation? Frank's face went red. Don't twist this, Dorothy. Don't make me the villain for trying to protect what's ours. It's not ours, though. Is it, Frank? I set down my fork with perfect calm. Uncle Gerald left those properties to me. Specifically to me. Not to us. Not to the family. To me. The silence was deafening. Of course to you, Vanessa jumped in, her voice soothing. But you're married. In a marriage, everything's shared. Not in Oregon. Oregon is an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. What I inherit is separate property unless I choose to commingle it. I smiled at their shocked faces. I've been reading up. Frank stood abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood. "Since when do you read legal statutes? Since when do you question everything I say?" "Since I found your USB drive." The words came out before I could stop them. Every face turned white. "What USB drive?" Stephen asked slowly. "Nothing," Frank said quickly. "Your mother's confused." "I'm not confused. I'm very clear." I stood up, my legs steadier than I expected. "The drive with the forged signatures. The transfers to Stephen's account that he didn't authorize. The practice documents where you've been perfecting my handwriting." "Mom?" Stephen's voice cracked. "What's she talking about, Dad?" Frank and Vanessa exchanged panicked glances. This wasn't part of their script. I wasn't supposed to know. I was supposed to be the confused, malleable old woman. "I think," I said quietly, "that I'll be going home now. Stephen, why don't you walk me to my car?" "I'll drive you," Frank said tersely. "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "Stephen will walk me. You'll stay here and explain to our son why you've been forging his mother's signature." I walked out of that house with my head high and my grandson's goodnight kiss still warm on my cheek. Stephen followed me to the driveway, his face stricken. "Mom, I swear to God, I don't know anything about forged signatures or transfers." "I know you don't." "Sweetheart." I cupped his face in both hands. "You're my good boy. You always have been. But your wife and your father? They've been planning something for a long time, and I need you to decide whose side you're on. Your side. Always your side. Even if it means your marriage might not survive?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Then, what did they do, Mom?" "Meet me for breakfast tomorrow. Angelo's, 8 a.m. Come alone. And Stephen?" I squeezed his hands. "Don't tell Vanessa where you're going." I drove home through dark streets, my recording pen full of threats and lies, my heart full of purpose. Frank would be furious when he got home. There might be yelling, accusations, maybe worse. But for the first time in months, I wasn't scared. I was ready. Frank came home at midnight, and I was waiting, not cowering in bed like he probably expected. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and my grandmother's knitting, perfectly calm. "We need to talk." He loomed in the doorway, trying to intimidate me with his size and his anger. "Yes, we do." I didn't look up from my knitting. Click, click, click went the needles. "But not tonight. I'm tired." "Tired? You humiliate me in front of our son, accuse me of forgery. And now you're tired?" "Frank, it's late. We're both emotional. Let's discuss this in the morning when we've both calmed down." Click, click, click. "Stop doing that." He grabbed the knitting from my hands and threw it across the room. I looked at him then, really looked at him, and I didn't see my husband anymore. I saw a stranger, a dangerous one. That was my grandmother's work. "Pick it up." "Or what?" He leaned down, his face inches from mine. "What are you going to do, Dot? Leave me? After 42 years? Where would you go? Who would want you? A 67-year-old woman with no job, no skills, no life outside this house." Every word was designed to wound, to remind me of my dependence, my vulnerability. A month ago, it would have worked. A month ago, I would have apologized, backed down, made myself smaller. "I'd go to one of the 4 apartment buildings I own," I said calmly. "Or maybe the beach house. I hear Cannon Beach is lovely this time of year." He grabbed my wrist, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "Those properties are community assets. You can't just—" "They're not." I checked. Oregon law is very clear about inherited property. I pulled my wrist free and stood up, facing him. "And if you ever grab me like that again, I'll call the police." For a moment, I thought he might hit me. His fist clenched, his face went purple with rage. Then he turned and walked out, slamming the bedroom door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. I sat back down, picked up my grandmother's knitting from where it had fallen, and finished my tea. My hands only shook a little. At 7:55 a.m., I was at Angelo's. Stephen arrived at 8 on the dot, looking like he hadn't slept. He slid into the booth across from me and said, without preamble, "Vanessa has $200,000 in gambling debt." "I know. She's been using my business account to pay some of it off. I just found out last night after you left. We had a fight that lasted until 4 a.m. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "Don't be. I'm the idiot who didn't notice." He rubbed his face with both hands. "She said Dad promised her access to your money to pay off the debts. Said it was a family investment. But Mom, I never authorized any transfers to my accounts. If there are documents with my signature, they're forgeries. I have photos. He was quiet for a long moment. What are we going to do? Not what was I going to do. What were we going to do? My son, my ally. I reached across the table and gripped his hand. I'm going to do something crazy. How crazy? I'm going to throw a party. Stephen blinked. A party. A big one. Announce my inheritance properly. Celebrate Uncle Gerald's life. Invite all our friends and family. I smiled at his confusion. Your father thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'll cave under pressure. So I'm going to give him what he wants. I don't understand. Good. Neither will he. That's the point. I spent the next 3 days planning the party and watching Frank watch me. He was waiting for something, I could tell. Waiting for me to break, to apologize, to come crawling back to ask what I should do with Uncle Gerald's complicated legacy. Instead, I sent out invitations to 30 people. I ordered catering. I bought a new dress, royal blue with a V-neck that made me look powerful instead of old. I hired a bartender and a server. Frank couldn't figure out what game I was playing. Why are you doing this? He asked Wednesday evening, watching me address envelopes at the dining room table. Uncle Gerald would have wanted a proper memorial, a celebration of life. I looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Don't you think? With 30 people and catering? That's going to cost a fortune. I can afford it now. I smiled sweetly. That's the point of inheriting money, isn't it? To be able to do nice things? He couldn't argue with that logic, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. He thought this was my breakdown. Me spending money recklessly, proving I couldn't handle the responsibility. Perfect justification for taking control. Let him think that. Saturday night. Our house was full of people. Friends from church, neighbors, Frank's golf buddies, my book club ladies, Stephen and his family. Even Linda Morrison, my attorney, who everyone assumed was just a family friend. Frank worked the room like a politician, telling everyone about my inheritance, playing the proud husband. My Dorothy's come into some property, 4 apartment buildings downtown, and a beautiful beach house. I keep telling her we should start planning vacations. 4 buildings? Martha from book club whistled. Dorothy, you're a real estate mogul. Just lucky. I raised my glass. Uncle Gerald was generous. Vanessa was charm personified, helping serve appetizers, making conversation. Only Stephen saw through her performance. He kept close to me all evening, a silent protector. At 9 p.m., I clinked my glass for attention. Thank you all for coming. I wanted to share some exciting news. I could feel Frank's anticipation, his assumption that I was about to announce I was signing the properties over to family management. Vanessa actually licked her lips. I'm going on a trip, I announced, for 2 whole weeks. I'm going to visit all of Uncle Gerald's properties, meet the tenants, understand what he built, really get to know my inheritance. The room erupted in congratulations and questions. Where would I stay? Was I taking anyone with me? 2 weeks alone. Wasn't I scared? I'll be fine. I've booked hotels, rented a car, made appointments with the property managers. It's all arranged. I smiled at Frank's frozen expression. I leave Monday morning. After everyone left, Frank cornered me in the kitchen. You can't be serious. 2 weeks alone? Ooh. You haven't traveled by yourself in 40 years. Then it's time I started. I loaded glasses into the dishwasher, not looking at him. Dorothy, I forbid it. I stopped loading and turned to face him. You forbid it? I'm not your child, Frank. I'm your wife, and I'm going. What about us? What about working on our relationship? You've been distant all week because you tried to steal my inheritance. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and undeniable. Because you forged documents. Because you planned to have me committed. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? His face went through several expressions. Shock, denial, anger, finally settling on something like resignation. Everything I did was to protect us, to protect you from making mistakes. Mistakes like keeping my own property, maintaining my independence. You're not independent. You haven't worked in 35 years. You don't understand money, investments, legal matters. You need guidance. From someone who's been practicing forging my signature, I finished loading the dishwasher and closed it with a decisive click. I'm leaving Monday. When I get back, we'll talk about what happens next. But Frank, I looked him straight in the eye. The days of you making decisions for me are over. I walked upstairs, locked the bedroom door, and packed my suitcase. Behind me, I could hear Frank pacing in the hallway, muttering to himself. Sunday morning, I went to church alone, sat in our usual pew, and prayed for the first time in months. Not for forgiveness, not for guidance. I prayed for strength to do what needed to be done. Linda Morrison texted me during the service. Investigator has news. Urgent. Call me. I called from the church parking lot. What did you find? Your husband has a storage unit you don't know about. In it, he has detailed financial records of your uncle's properties, documents showing he was tracking Gerald's health for the past year, and she paused. Dorothy, he has brochures from 3 different nursing homes, all dated from before Gerald died. My hands went numb. He was planning this for over a year. At least. The investigator also found something else. Regular payments to a woman named Christine Morrison, $2,000 a month for the past 3 years. I'll send you her address. She's in Seattle. I drove home in a daze. $65,000 in 3 years. For what? A mistress? Blackmail? Another secret I didn't know about? When I got home, Frank was in his office again, door closed. I packed the last of my things, hid Linda's folder deeper in my recipe binder, and went to bed early. Monday morning, I left at dawn while Frank was still sleeping. I didn't leave a note. I just drove away from my house, my husband, my old life, with my suitcase in the trunk and no idea what I'd find. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't coming back the same woman who left. The drive to Portland took me through familiar highways that felt brand new. Had the mountains always been this beautiful? Had the sky always been this huge? I called Stephen from the road. I'm on my way. Don't tell anyone where I'm going. Be safe, Mom. Call me if you need anything. My first stop was the apartment buildings. 4 brick structures in downtown Portland, built in the 1920s, beautifully maintained. The property manager, a cheerful woman named Patricia, gave me a tour. Your uncle was a wonderful landlord, she said, showing me tenant files. He kept rents reasonable, maintained everything promptly. People lived here for decades. I walked through the buildings, met tenants, saw the care Uncle Gerald had put into these places. He'd built something real, something that mattered. Mrs. Whitman? Patricia handed me a folder. Gerald left this for you. Said to give it to you when you came in person. Inside was a letter in his familiar handwriting. Dorothy, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably confused. Your husband has been asking questions about my properties for the past 2 years, wanting to know their value, their potential, if I'd consider selling. When I told him they'd be yours someday, he became very interested in my health, started suggesting I needed better medical care, perhaps a facility. It worried me, made me wonder what he might do if you suddenly came into money, so I structured things to protect you. The trust, the properties, all of it is designed to be yours alone. Don't let anyone take it from you. You're stronger than you know, much stronger than Frank ever gave you credit for. Live your life, kiddo, the one you should have had. Love, Uncle G. I cried in Patricia's office for 20 minutes. She brought me tissue and coffee and didn't ask questions. That night, in a hotel room overlooking the city, I called the investigator directly. Tell me about Christine Morrison. I can do better than tell you. I can show you. He sent photos to my phone. They showed Frank, with a woman who looked nothing like me. Younger, blonde, laughing. Photos of them at restaurants, holding hands, entering her apartment together. The timestamps went back 5 years. 5 years of lies. 5 years of him coming home to me and pretending. 5 years of I love you and good morning kisses, and lying beside me at night after spending the afternoon with her. I should have been devastated. Instead, I felt nothing. Just cold, clear rage. I called Linda Morrison. I want a divorce. I'll have papers drawn up, but Dorothy, there's more you should know about Christine. What more could there be? She's not his mistress. She's his business partner. They've been buying properties together, using forged documents to secure loans against your assets. The $2,000 a month? That's his share of the profits from their flips. He's been using your credit, your signature, your financial reputation to build a real estate empire you didn't know about. The room spun. How much? 7 properties. $3 million in loans. All of it technically in your name because he forged documents making you a co-signer. If any of it goes bad, you're liable. Not devastated anymore. Furious. I'd spent 42 years being faithful, being supportive, being the good wife while Frank built a whole secret life. Can we prosecute? Oh yes, fraud, forgery, identity theft. He could go to prison. Do it. I spent the rest of the week touring my other properties, making plans. The beach house was perfect, exactly as I remembered from visits as a child. Weathered wood, huge windows, the ocean close enough to hear. I could live here. Start over. Be myself instead of Frank's wife. Thursday afternoon, Stephen called. Mom, Dad's freaking out. He drove to Portland looking for you. The hotel said you checked out yesterday. I'm at the beach house. I'm fine. He's saying you've lost your mind, that you're having some kind of breakdown. Vanessa's backing him up, telling everyone you need help. Of course she is. Stephen, I need you to do something for me. Can you access your father's office, his computer? Why? Trust me. An hour later, Stephen called back. Mom, there are files here, business plans, property records, and they're all in your name, but I've never seen any of this before. Photograph everything. Upload it to the cloud, then lock his office and don't say anything. What is all this? Evidence. I looked out at the ocean, watching waves crash against the shore. Your father's been living a double life, Stephen, and it's about to catch up with him. Friday morning. A registered letter arrived at the beach house. Linda's firm had found me. Inside were divorce papers, fraud charges, and a restraining order against Frank. Also inside, photos the investigator had taken just that morning. Frank and Christine, at a bank, trying to secure another loan, using more forged documents. He didn't even stop when I left. He escalated. I called Linda. Serve him today, publicly. I want everyone to see. Are you sure? This will be ugly. Good. I'm done protecting his reputation. I stayed at the beach house all weekend, walking on the sand, thinking about Uncle Gerald's letter, the life I should have had. I'd given up architecture school to marry Frank, given up my dreams to support his career, given up myself piece by piece until I forgot who I was. Not anymore. Monday morning, I drove back to Portland. Not home, to Stephen's house. He answered the door looking exhausted. Dad's been calling nonstop. The papers were served Saturday at his golf club, in front of everyone. Good. Mom, he's telling people you're sick. Vanessa's supporting him. They're trying to build a case that you're incompetent. I smiled. Let them try. I have recordings of them planning to steal my inheritance. I have evidence of his fraud. I have 5 years of proof that he's been lying to me. Let them try to prove I'm incompetent. Stephen laughed, surprised. You're scary when you're angry. I'm not angry, sweetheart. I'm done being afraid. That week, I stayed with Stephen. Vanessa moved out, back to her parents' house. The evidence of her gambling debts and her partnership with Frank in their schemes was overwhelming. I'm filing for divorce too, Stephen told me Wednesday evening. I can't believe I didn't see what she was. Love blinds us. I hugged him tight. But we see clearly now. Thursday, Frank called my cell phone. I almost didn't answer. Then I realized I wanted to hear what he had to say. Dorothy, please, we can work this out. There's nothing to work out, Frank. You forged my signature. You stole my identity. You planned to have me committed. You had a partner in real estate fraud. For 5 years, you lied to me every single day. Christine means nothing. The business was just a way to secure our future. Your future. Not ours. You were planning to leave me once you had enough money. The nursing home wasn't about control. It was about getting rid of me so you could be free. His silence confirmed everything. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to face fraud charges. I'm going to divorce you and take everything that's legally mine. You'll be lucky if you don't go to prison. After 42 years, this is how you treat me? After 42 years of devotion, this is how you treated me. I hung up. Friday afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Whitman? This is Christine Morrison. I almost hung up. Then, curiosity won. What do you want? To apologize. I didn't know about the forged documents. Frank told me you were partners, that you knew about everything. When the investigator showed me the truth, her voice broke. I'm cooperating with the prosecutor. I'll testify about everything Frank did. The forgeries, the schemes, all of it. Why should I believe you? Because he did the same thing to me that he did to you. Made me think I was special, that we were building something together. Then I found out I'm the fourth woman he's pulled this scheme with. We're all just marks to him. Fourth woman. Fourth life he'd tried to steal. I thanked her and hung up, not angry anymore. Just tired. Tired of Frank, of lies, of discovering new betrayals every day. That night, Stephen and I sat on his back porch with wine and Chinese food. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now I live my life. Really live it. Uncle Gerald left me more than property. He left me a second chance. I'm proud of you, Mom." I looked at my son, my good son, who'd stood by me when everything fell apart. "I'm proud of us both. We survived. That's enough." But I knew it wasn't just survival. It was the beginning of something new. Something better. And Frank? Frank would learn what happens when you underestimate a woman who's finally learned her worth. The DNA results arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was replacing a broken garbage disposal in Building 3. Bradley called, his voice hollow. "She's mine. Emma's mine." I sat down on the tenant's kitchen floor, wrench still in hand. Thank God. Lucas isn't. The words came out strangled. My son, the kid I've been raising for 3 years, he's Paul's. The wrench slipped from my fingers, clattering on the tile. Paul had a son with Vanessa. My husband had created a child with my daughter-in-law while I'd been babysitting them both, completely oblivious. "Bradley, I'm so sorry. Vanessa's lawyer called this morning. She wants full custody of Lucas. Says I have no legal right since I'm not the biological father." He was crying now, harsh sobs that broke my heart. "Mom, I love that little boy. He calls me Daddy. How do I explain to a 3-year-old that I'm not really his father?" "You are his father. Biology doesn't change 3 years of love. Tell that to the family court system." After we hung up, I sat in that stranger's kitchen and thought about the cascading destruction Paul had caused. Not just stealing, not just fraud, but destroying his own son's family, creating a child he'd never intended to claim, using everyone around him as props in his desperate scramble to save himself. That afternoon, I called my property manager friend, the one Sarah Chen had introduced me to. "Linda, I need advice on something that's not about buildings." "Shoot. If someone wanted to hurt me financially, really hurt me, what's my biggest vulnerability right now?" Linda was quiet for a moment. "Your tenants. If someone convinced them you were unstable or unreliable, you could face mass exodus. New property owners always face skepticism. Add in rumors of mental incompetence, and you'd have a disaster." My blood ran cold. That's what I was afraid of. "Why? Is someone targeting you?" "My ex-husband is desperate and angry, and he knows exactly where to strike." The first sign came 2 days later. Mrs. Chen in Building 1 called, apologetic but firm. "Mrs. Harper, I'm sorry, but we've decided not to renew our lease next month. My husband found us a place closer to his work." Mrs. Chen had been a tenant for 8 years. She told me just last month how much she loved the building. Then Mr. Rodriguez from Building 2. "My daughter thinks we should move. She's worried about the new management." By Friday, I'd received 5 non-renewal notices. All long-term tenants, all suddenly finding reasons to leave. I drove to Building 1 and knocked on Mrs. Chen's door. She opened it cautiously, and I saw fear in her eyes. "Mrs. Chen, please be honest with me. Did someone contact you about me?" She glanced behind her nervously. "A man came by, said he was your husband, that you were having problems, memory issues, that the buildings might not be properly maintained anymore. Did he offer you money to leave?" "First month's rent free at a new place. He said he was trying to protect us from a bad situation." I thanked her and went to each building, knocking on doors. The story was the same. Paul had visited every tenant who'd given notice, spinning tales of my incompetence, offering incentives to leave, trying to tank my rental income and force me to sell at a loss. That evening, I called a tenant meeting at Building 1's community room. 18 people showed up, curiosity overriding caution. I stood at the front, hands shaking, but voice steady. "My name is Margaret Harper. Some of you have met a man claiming to be my concerned husband. I want you to know the truth." I told them everything. The inheritance, the fraud, the separation, the affair. I showed them Dr. Chen's evaluation proving my competence. I explained that Paul was trying to destroy me financially because I'd refused to be his victim. "I understand if you want to leave," I finished. "I'm new to this. I'll make mistakes. But I promise you this. I'll be honest, I'll be fair, and I'll take care of these buildings the way my uncle did for decades. You have my word. Mrs. Chen stood up. My husband and I will be staying. We've lived here 8 years under Mr. Robert, and we trust his judgment. If he left these buildings to you, that's good enough for us. One by one, others stood. Not everyone. 3 tenants still left. But 15 stayed, and 2 told me they'd spread the word that I was legitimate. Walking back to my car, I felt something shift inside me. Not just anger anymore. Strategy. Paul wanted to play dirty? I could play smarter. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order. Harold helped me compile evidence, the tenant visits, the harassment at the beach house, the ongoing attempts to sabotage my business. The judge granted it immediately. Mr. Harper is to stay 500 feet from you, your properties, and your tenants, the judge said. Violation will result in arrest. I left the courthouse feeling like I'd won a battle, not realizing the war was just beginning. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mrs. Harper, this is Detective Sarah Morrison with Portland PD. We need to talk about your husband. My stomach dropped. What about him? He's filed a police report claiming you've stolen $4 million in assets that rightfully belong to the marital estate. We need you to come down to the station. I sat in my car, hand gripping the phone. Of course. When restraining orders didn't work, Paul escalated. If he couldn't harass me directly, he'd use the legal system to do it for him. I'll be there in an hour, I said, with my attorney. Harold met me at the station, briefcase in hand. Don't say anything without me present. Detective Morrison was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She led us to an interrogation room, and I felt like a criminal even though I'd done nothing wrong. Mrs. Harper, your husband claims you've hidden assets and committed fraud to deprive him of his share of the marital estate. Harold slid a folder across the table. Mrs. Harper inherited property through an irrevocable trust established before her marriage. It's not marital property. Here's the documentation. Detective Morrison reviewed the papers, her expression neutral. And the fraud allegations? Mr. Harper is the one who committed fraud, Harold said calmly. We have documented evidence of forged power of attorney, conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, and ongoing harassment. Would you like to see it? The detective's eyebrows rose. I think I would. 2 hours later, I walked out of the police station with Detective Morrison's card and a promise that she'd be looking into Mr. Harper's claims more thoroughly. In the parking lot, Harold put a hand on my shoulder. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. I know, I said. But what I didn't say was that I was ready. Paul had started this war thinking I'd surrender. He'd forgotten that I'd survived 64 years of life, raised a son, buried my parents, and rebuilt myself from nothing. I wasn't the same woman he'd married, and he was about to find out exactly how much he'd underestimated me. The property management course started on Monday. I'd enrolled in an intensive 6-week program that met 3 evenings a week. Taught by a retired real estate investor named Marcus Webb. The classroom was in a community college building, and I felt ridiculously out of place among the younger students. Most of you are here to break into property management as a career, Marcus said during the first session. Anyone here actually own property? I raised my hand, along with 2 others. How many units? 48, I said. The room went silent. Even Marcus looked surprised. Well then, looks like we have a serious investor in the room. During the break, 3 students approached me. One was a young woman named Kayla, maybe 30, with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. Mrs. Harper, I'm graduating with my property management certification next month. If you're looking for help managing 48 units, I'd love to interview. I studied her. Confident but not cocky. Eager but professional. Send me your resume. By the end of the first week, I'd learned more about tenant law, maintenance protocols, and financial management than I'd thought possible. I started implementing systems in my buildings: online rent payment, digital maintenance requests, quarterly inspections. The work was exhausting but satisfying. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that was entirely mine. Bradley called Thursday evening. Mom, I need a favor, a big one. What's wrong? Vanessa's lawyer filed an emergency custody hearing. She's claiming I'm unstable and unsafe around Lucas. They're trying to get sole custody and supervised visitation only for me. On what grounds? Paul gave them a statement. Said I've been violent, aggressive, that he's afraid for his grandson's safety. Bradley's voice was tight with rage. He's lying, Mom. He's lying to take Lucas away from me. We'll fight this. I'll testify. I'll hire the best family law attorney in Portland. It's next Tuesday. Can you be there? Wild horses couldn't keep me away. The custody hearing was in a small courtroom that smelled like old carpet and stale coffee. Vanessa sat with her attorney, looking pale but determined. Paul sat in the back row, his presence like a dark cloud. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Walsh. She reviewed the paperwork with a frown. Mr. Harper, you're asking for sole custody of a 3-year-old boy, claiming the father who has raised him since birth is suddenly dangerous. These are serious allegations. Vanessa's attorney stood. Your Honor, we have testimony from the child's biological grandfather expressing concern about Mr. Bradley Harper's recent behavior. Erratic decisions, financial instability, anger management issues. Call your witness, Judge Walsh said. Paul took the stand, and I watched my ex-husband lie under oath. He described Bradley as increasingly unstable, claimed he'd witnessed violent outbursts, suggested that the stress of learning about Lucas's paternity had triggered something dangerous. It was all fiction, carefully crafted fiction designed to destroy our son. When it was Bradley's turn, his attorney called me to the stand. Mrs. Harper, you're Bradley's mother. How would you describe his relationship with Lucas? Lucas is the center of Bradley's world. He coaches his t-ball team, reads to him every night, takes him to the park every Saturday morning. The biological test results were devastating for Bradley, but they didn't change his love for that little boy. And Mr. Paul Harper's testimony about Bradley's instability? I looked directly at Paul. Paul Harper is a liar. He's been lying for years. He had an affair with his daughter-in-law, fathered a child with her, and is now weaponizing that child to punish our son for supporting me. Every word he said on this stand is designed to hurt Bradley, not protect Lucas. Vanessa's attorney objected, but Judge Walsh held up her hand. I want to hear this. Continue, Mrs. Harper. I told the judge everything. The fraud, the affair, the restraining order, the police report. I watched Paul's face turn red, watched Vanessa sink lower in her chair. Your Honor, I finished. Paul Harper is using this child as a weapon. He doesn't care about Lucas's well-being. He cares about punishing me and Bradley for refusing to be his victims. Judge Walsh was silent for a long moment. Mr. Harper, please approach the bench. Paul stood, confident swagger in place. The judge's next words wiped it away. Mr. Harper, I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've seen many things, but using a child as ammunition in an adult vendetta is perhaps the most despicable. I'm ordering an immediate investigation into allegations of fraud and perjury. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Harper out of my courtroom. The bailiff moved toward Paul, and the swagger disappeared. Your Honor, I have a right to— You have the right to remain silent, Judge Walsh interrupted. I suggest you exercise it. As they removed Paul from the courtroom, Judge Walsh turned to Vanessa. Ms. Thompson, sole custody is denied. Joint custody will remain in place pending investigation of these allegations. If I find that you knowingly used fraudulent testimony to deprive Mr. Bradley Harper of his parental rights, you will face consequences. Do you understand? Vanessa nodded, tears streaming down her face. Outside the courthouse, Bradley pulled me into a fierce hug. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. That's what mothers do, I said. We protect our children, even from their fathers. But as we walked to our cars, I couldn't shake the feeling that Paul wasn't done. Cornered animals were the most dangerous, and I'd just backed him into a very tight corner. That night, back at the beach house, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood on the porch watching the waves. My phone rang. Detective Morrison. Mrs. Harper, I thought you should know. We've opened a formal investigation into Paul Harper. Based on the evidence you provided and the incident in family court today, we're looking at charges of fraud, perjury, and conspiracy. Will he go to prison? If we can prove everything? Possibly. These are serious charges. After she hung up, I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt exhausted. This wasn't what I'd wanted. I'd wanted a quiet retirement, maybe some travel, time with my grandchildren. Instead, I'd gotten war, but I'd also gotten something else. The knowledge that I was strong enough to fight, that I didn't need Paul or anyone else to protect me, that at 64, I was just beginning to understand who Margaret Harper really was, and she was formidable. The police investigation moved faster than I expected. Detective Morrison called me in twice more, each time asking detailed questions about the forged documents, the tenant harassment, and Paul's behavior at the beach house. "We're building a strong case," she told me after the second interview. "But I need to warn you, he's getting desperate. Desperate people do unpredictable things." I increased security at all 4 buildings, installed cameras, changed locks, hired a night patrol service. At the beach house, I added motion sensor lights and a security system that connected directly to local police. Kayla started working for me 3 days a week, handling tenant communications and maintenance scheduling. She was efficient, professional, and asked smart questions. Having help lifted an enormous weight. "Mrs. Harper," she said one afternoon while reviewing maintenance requests, "these buildings are in excellent shape. Your uncle really knew what he was doing. He taught himself everything from books and experience, never even finished high school. That's impressive. Most property owners with this many units have professional management. I'm learning." I pulled up the financial spreadsheets I'd been maintaining. "But there's so much I don't know." "You're doing great for someone who inherited these 3 months ago." Kayla paused. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Why do this yourself? You could hire a management company, collect the checks, and never worry about broken water heaters at 2 a.m. I thought about that. Because Uncle Robert built this with his own hands, his own knowledge. If I just handed it off to strangers, I'd be losing the last connection to him. This is his legacy. I want to honor it by understanding it." Kayla smiled. "He chose the right person to leave it to." That Saturday, I drove to Portland to have lunch with Bradley. We met at a diner near his house, neutral territory where we could talk without the weight of family history pressing down. "How's Lucas?" I asked. Confused, he keeps asking why he can't see Grandpa Paul anymore. Bradley stirred his coffee absently. "How do I explain that his grandfather is a monster without making him feel like he's connected to something bad? You don't. He's 3. You just love him and protect him and let him figure out the complicated stuff when he's older. The DNA results changed everything and nothing. I look at him and I still see my son, but now I also see Paul, his expressions, his laugh. It's like Paul infected my family in the most permanent way possible." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Lucas is innocent in all this. Don't let Paul's actions poison your relationship with that little boy." "I know. I'm trying." He met my eyes. "How are you? Really? Tired? Angry? Determined? Terrified? Take your pick. Do you regret it? Fighting back instead of just letting Paul have what he wanted?" I considered the question. 3 months ago, I would have rolled over, given him everything to keep the peace. But Uncle Robert gave me more than property. He gave me permission to be strong, to fight for myself. No, I don't regret it, even when it's hard. My phone buzzed. Harold Bennett. I answered immediately. "Margaret, Paul's attorney just filed a countersuit. He's claiming you defamed him in court and is seeking $2 million in damages." I closed my eyes. Of course he is. It's a nuisance suit, it won't go anywhere, but it's going to tie up time and resources. After I hung up, Bradley was watching me with concern. More legal problems? Paul's suing me for defamation. Apparently telling the truth in court counts as damaging his reputation. This is insane. When does it end? When one of us breaks. I gathered my purse. And it's not going to be me. But driving back to Cannon Beach, I felt the weight of the constant battle pressing down. Every time I took a step forward, Paul found a new way to drag me back. The legal fees were mounting. The emotional toll was exhausting. How long could I keep this up? At the beach house, I found something that made my blood run cold. Someone had spray-painted a message on my garage door. "Thief." I called the police immediately. They came, took photos, dusted for fingerprints. The investigating officer was sympathetic but not optimistic. With the restraining order, if it was your ex-husband, he violated it. But we'd need proof. Do your cameras cover this angle? They didn't. I'd focused on the doors and windows, not the garage. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. The house that had felt like sanctuary now felt violated. Unsafe. At 2 a.m. my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Margaret." Paul's voice was slurred, drunk. You think you've won. You think you destroyed me. But I still have cards to play. This call violates the restraining order. Sue me. Add it to the list." He laughed bitterly. "You know what's funny? I actually loved you once. Really loved you. But you were never enough. Never exciting enough. Never ambitious enough. Just safe. Boring." The words should have hurt. Instead, they clarified everything. "Paul, I don't care if you loved me or not. I don't care what you think of me. I just want you out of my life. Too bad. We're connected forever now. Through Bradley, through Lucas. You can't escape me, Margaret. I'll always be there in the background, reminding you that you're not as strong as you think you are." I hung up and immediately forwarded the recording to Detective Morrison and Harold. Let him threaten me. Every threat was more evidence, more ammunition. But lying in bed afterward, I couldn't stop shaking. This wasn't just about money anymore. Paul wanted to destroy me completely, and I wasn't sure I had the strength to keep fighting. The next morning, Rebecca called. "I'm coming to visit. Don't argue. I'm already at the airport." She arrived that afternoon, took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "You look like hell, Maggie." "I feel like hell." We walked on the beach and I told her everything. The vandalism, the lawsuit, the phone call. Rebecca listened without interrupting, her jaw getting tighter with each revelation. "You need to end this," she finally said. "Not by giving up, by going on offense." "What do you mean?" "Stop reacting to Paul's attacks and start attacking back. Find his weakness and hit it hard." "I don't know what his weakness is." Rebecca stopped walking and looked at me. "Yes, you do. His ego, his reputation, his belief that he's smarter than everyone. Use that." She was right. Paul's entire identity was built on being the successful consultant, the respected businessman, the charming manipulator. What if I exposed all of it? "I need to make some calls," I said. Walking back to the house with my sister beside me, I felt something shift. Rebecca was right. I'd been playing defense, trying to protect what was mine. But defense only got you so far. It was time to play offense. And Paul Harper was about to discover that Margaret Harper was done being anyone's victim. The plan came together over the next week. Harold connected me with a forensic accountant named David Chen, no relation to my neuropsychologist. David specialized in uncovering financial fraud, and he agreed to audit Paul's business records. "If he's been hiding money or cooking books, I'll find it," David promised. Failed businesses usually have interesting financial trails. While David worked, I reached out to Paul's former clients, not to badmouth him, just to ask questions. How long had they worked with Paul? Why had they ended the relationship? Were there any concerns about his professional conduct? The responses were illuminating. 3 clients mentioned money that had gone missing. 2 described projects Paul had billed for but never completed. 1 suspected he'd been using their business accounts for personal expenses. "This is embezzlement," Harold said when I showed him the evidence. "If we can prove it, Paul won't just face civil charges. He'll face criminal prosecution. How long will it take?" "David needs another week to trace everything. But Margaret, once we file this, there's no going back. Paul could go to prison for years." I thought about Bradley, about Lucas, about the ripple effects of destroying Paul completely. Then I thought about the spray-painted garage, the midnight phone calls, the custody hearing where Paul had lied under oath to hurt his own son. "File it," I said. David Chen's report arrived on a Tuesday morning. 147 pages documenting a decade of financial misconduct. Paul had been embezzling from clients for years, covering his tracks with shell corporations and falsified invoices. His consulting business hadn't failed because of the economy. It had failed because he'd been stealing from it. The total amount, over $800,000. "This is fraud on a massive scale," David explained in Harold's office. "He's been running a Ponzi-style scheme, using new client money to pay old client obligations while skimming off the top. When the client base dried up, the whole thing collapsed. Can we prove it in court? Every transaction is documented. Bank records, invoices, email correspondence. This is airtight." Harold looked at me seriously. "Once we file this with the police and the State Bar Association, Paul's life as he knows it is over." "Are you absolutely certain?" I thought about Mrs. Chen and the other tenants Paul had tried to drive away, about Bradley fighting for custody of Lucas, about the forged power of attorney and the plan to have me committed, About 38 years of marriage built on lies I'd been too trusting to see. I'm certain. We filed the complaint that afternoon. By evening, Detective Morrison called. "Mrs. Harper, the district attorney wants to meet with you tomorrow. This is bigger than we initially thought." The DA's office was downtown, sterile and bureaucratic. District Attorney Richard Walsh, no relation to the family court judge, was a no-nonsense man in his 50s with sharp eyes. "Mrs. Harper, if this evidence holds up, we're looking at multiple felony charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. Your ex-husband could face 20 years in federal prison." The number hit me like a physical blow. 20 years. Paul would be 84 when he got out. "I need you to understand the implications," Walsh continued. "This will be public, messy. Every detail of your marriage will be examined. The affair, the custody battle, everything. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," I said, more confidently than I felt. "Good. We'll need your full cooperation. Testimony, documents, anything that supports the timeline of his fraudulent activity." Walking out of the DA's office, I felt simultaneously powerful and terrified. I just set in motion something that couldn't be stopped. Paul would be arrested, his reputation destroyed, his freedom taken, and I'd done it. That evening, Bradley called. "Mom, what did you do? Paul's attorney just contacted me. They're threatening to file harassment charges against you for malicious prosecution." I filed a complaint with the DA about Paul's business practices. They investigated and found evidence of fraud. Fraud? What kind of fraud? I explained everything. The embezzlement, the shell corporations, the $800,000 stolen from clients. Bradley was silent for a long time. "Jesus, Mom. He's going to prison." "Yes. And you're okay with that?" "Are you?" Bradley sighed. "I don't know. He's still my father. But after everything he's done, maybe this is what he deserves." 2 days later, Paul was arrested. It happened at his studio apartment at 6 a.m. I know because Detective Morrison called to tell me. "He's being arraigned this afternoon. Bail hearing tomorrow. Thought you'd want to know." I drove to Portland for the arraignment. Sitting in the back of the courtroom watching Paul in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen him. The charges were read: 16 counts of wire fraud, 8 counts of embezzlement, 4 counts of money laundering. The judge set bail at $500,000, which Paul couldn't possibly afford. He looked up, scanning the courtroom, and our eyes met. I saw rage there, and fear, and something else that might have been broken understanding. This was really happening. The man I'd married was going to prison because of evidence I'd helped gather. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Someone had tipped them off about the case. "Mrs. Harper, is it true your husband defrauded multiple businesses? Were you aware of his criminal activity?" Harold steered me away from the cameras, but the damage was done. By that evening, the story was everywhere. Local consultant arrested for $1 million fraud scheme. My phone started ringing. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years, former neighbors, people who just wanted gossip. I turned it off and sat in the beach house, staring at the ocean. What had I become? The kind of person who destroyed her ex-husband? The kind of person who chose vengeance over mercy? But then I remembered the spray-painted garage, the custody hearing, the plan to have me declared incompetent. Paul had made his choices. He'd committed crimes. I just refused to be his accomplice through silence. Rebecca called from Chicago. "I saw the news. How are you holding up?" "I don't know. I feel like I should feel guilty, but mostly I just feel tired." "You did the right thing. He hurt people, Maggie. Real people who trusted him. You gave them justice. Maybe she was right. Or maybe we were both trying to justify something that couldn't be justified." That night, I dreamed about the day Paul and I got married. We were so young, so hopeful. I'd believed in forever then. Believed in the promises we made. When had it all gone wrong? Or had it always been wrong, and I'd just been too blind to see? I woke at dawn to the sound of my phone buzzing. "Harold. Margaret. Paul's attorney wants to make a deal. He'll plead guilty to reduced charges if you agree not to testify in the civil fraud cases. The DA is willing to recommend 10 years instead of 20. 10 years. Still a lifetime, but less than 20. What do you think I should do? That's not my decision. It's yours. But Margaret, whatever you choose, make sure you can live with it. Because once this is done, There's no going back. I stood on my porch, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink, and thought about mercy and justice and the fine line between them. And I finally understood what Uncle Robert had been trying to teach me, that sometimes being strong meant making impossible choices, that sometimes protecting yourself meant hurting the people who hurt you first, that sometimes forgiveness wasn't the answer. "Tell the DA I'll testify," I said. No deals. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Every day, I sat in that courtroom listening to evidence of Paul's crimes. Former clients testified about missing money. Bank records showed elaborate schemes. Email exchanges revealed a calculated, methodical pattern of theft spanning 12 years. Paul's defense attorney tried to paint him as a desperate man driven to extremes by financial stress. But the evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't desperation. This was systematic fraud. On the witness stand, I testified about Paul's behavior in our final months together. The secrecy, the lies, the plan to have me committed. The defense attorney tried to make me look vindictive. "Mrs. Harper, isn't it true you're only pursuing these charges because you're angry about your husband's affair?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm pursuing these charges because he stole $800,000 from people who trusted him. The affair is between him and his conscience." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, Paul wouldn't look at me. "On the count of wire fraud, how do you find? Guilty? On the count of embezzlement, how do you find? Guilty." 16 counts. 16 guilty verdicts. Paul's face went gray as reality sank in. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I didn't attend. I'd seen enough. Paul received 14 years in federal prison. With good behavior, he'd serve 10. He'd be 77 when he got out. The civil cases followed. 5 former clients sued Paul for restitution. I testified in 3 of them. 3. All 5 won judgments totaling over $1 million, money Paul would never be able to pay. When it was finally over, I drove to the beach house and didn't leave for a week. I walked the beach, read books, cooked elaborate meals for one. I processed what I'd done and what had been done to me. Bradley visited on Saturday. We sat on the porch, drinking coffee, watching surfers catch early morning waves. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Now that it's really over?" "Empty," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel victorious or justified. Instead, I just feel hollow. He's my father and he's gone. But honestly, Mom, I'm relieved. Every day he was free was another day he could hurt someone. You, me, Lucas. You didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself. You just refused to go down with him." Emma and Lucas came running up from the beach, soaking wet and laughing. Lucas threw his arms around Bradley's neck. "Daddy, look what I found!" A perfect sand dollar, whole and white. "That's amazing, buddy." Bradley held him close, and I saw Lucas wasn't Paul's weapon anymore. He was just a little boy who loved his father. "Can we come back next weekend?" Emma asked me. "I love the beach house." "Anytime you want." "Sweetheart." Watching them play in the surf, I realized this was Uncle Robert's real gift. Not the property or the money, the chance to rebuild, to create something honest. A month later, I hired Kayla full-time. She was brilliant at property management, better than I'd ever be. Together, we renovated 2 vacant units and raised the rent on others to market rate. The buildings were thriving. I started taking photography classes at the community college. Something just for me. Something that had nothing to do with property or revenge or rebuilding, just art. Rebecca came to visit for a week. We walked the beach, cooked together, talked about everything and nothing. One evening, she said, "You're different now, stronger, but also softer somehow." "I don't feel stronger." "That's because you're strong enough now that you don't have to prove it anymore." 6 months after the trial, I got a letter from Paul. Prison mail, heavily censored. He'd written pages, but most had been redacted. What remained was brief. "Margaret, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I need you to know I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry I became the kind of man who could hurt you. You deserved better. You always did. I hope you find peace." I read the letter 3 times, then put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd have a response, but not today. Today, I just let it be another piece of the past. The day I turned 65, I threw myself a party at the beach house. Bradley and the kids came. Rebecca flew in from Chicago. Kayla brought her husband. Linda and Marcus from the property management course showed up with champagne. We ate, drank, laughed on the porch as the sun set over the Pacific. Emma played piano. When had Uncle Robert gotten a piano? And Lucas sang off-key. It was chaotic and perfect. "Happy birthday, Mom," Bradley said, pulling me aside. "This year has been insane." That's an understatement. But look at you. You're happy. Really happy. "I can't remember the last time I saw you like this." He was right. Standing on my porch, surrounded by people I loved, owning property I'd earned, living a life I'd chosen, I was happy. Uncle Robert had known what I'd needed even before I did. Not a rescue, an opportunity. The chance to discover who Margaret Harper could be when she stopped being who everyone else needed her to be. That night, after everyone left, I stood alone on the beach. The waves crashed against the shore, eternal and indifferent. Tomorrow I'd get up and manage properties, maybe take photos, call Rebecca, have lunch with Bradley. But tonight, I just stood in the darkness and felt grateful for the inheritance that changed everything, for the betrayal that forced me to be strong, for the fight that taught me I could win. Paul was in prison. Vanessa was in California. The buildings were profitable. Bradley was healing, and I was free. Not free from consequences or complications, but free to choose, free to build, free to be exactly who I wanted to be. I thought about the woman who'd stood on this porch 6 months ago, broken and betrayed, wondering if she had the strength to fight. She'd found her answer. And Margaret Harper was just getting started. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.